Hello there, a very good morning and welcome to another update on the current situation with the March 2 general and regional elections. I'm your host, Eddie Lane, and I have with me here uh, Deodat Indar, a candidate of the People's Progressive Party Civic, and I also have Sanjeev Datadin, attorney at law, and also a candidate of the People's Progressive Party Civic. Sanjeev,
Hello.
uh, Indar, a very good morning and welcome to the program.
Thank you, Eddie. Thank you.
Sanjeev, are you there? All right. We seem to be, we'll start. And I think Sanjeev is getting a little bit of an issue with his internet. But as it is now, Indar and Sanjeev, as it is now, we are in a situation where we're seeing naked attempts, again, by a desperate cabal in the APNU AFC to steal an election and to thwart the will of the people of this country. Maybe I should, for sake of emphasis, just regurgitate the numbers, the valid votes cast in these elections and how they were distributed, particularly between the APNU AFC and the People's Progressive Party Civic. And I'm going to use the numbers from the recount, which shows that the People's Progressive Party Civic received 233,336 votes. The APNU AFC got 217,920 votes. The difference there is 15,416 in favor of the People's Progressive Party Civic. It is clear cut, and the recount, before I say, the recount has been authenticated, for want of a better word, by Granger's, who Granger declared as the most legitimate interlocutor in this process, that is CARICOM. CARICOM has said that the recount exercise was free, fair, transparent, credible, and forms the basis for a declaration of the winner of the March 2 general and regional elections. One would recall that when attempts were made to bring back the Carter Center and other international observers, Granger and the APNUFC refused those requests and said that CARICOM is equipped and capable of overseeing this process. And Granger said that whatever comes out of the recount and the declaration made by the chair, he will abide by. What we have seen from then to now, at least at the commencement of the recount, a number of excuses and frivolous allegations of fraud and irregularities. And I think those are behind us by now because they have failed to present any evidence to corroborate those claims. What we are faced with now is a situation where Keith Lowenfield, the chief elections officer, is attempting something that is worse than what Mingo did. So what I'll do before I get into the details of our discussions, and we have so many issues to address, I'm going to ask for your opening comments, starting with you, Sanjeev, and of course, followed by you, Indar.
Ed, good morning to you. Good morning to Indar and our listeners and viewers. Ed, it's almost unbelievable. Every time you think that the public officials involved will not be so brazen, will not be so dishonest, and you think they're going to do the right thing, they invent a way to do the wrong thing. And they proceed to do it as if everybody is unaware of what they're doing and they have some sort of moral or legal justification to do so. I mean, one of the things that we have to look at, Ed, that is striking is Mingo's declaration was clearly debunked. We saw that chapter and verse at the Ottachung Convention Center. When Lowenfield submitted his numbers yesterday, Lowenfield submitted a report last weekend. Before, he's already submitted a report which stated what the valid votes were, but then he had a commentary of his opinion of what should and should not be. And what he now submitted yesterday doesn't match any of those two. So this is a third version of things. And it's making up numbers, Ed, whatever they feel. And do you know, if you look on Facebook and you look on social media, APNU supporters are saying, and they're taking pictures of the various persons' Facebook page, where they said the election results are 33-31-1, which were obviously PPP supporters who were aware that that should be the result. And they're saying, why are you complaining? That's the same result Mingo declared. They really think people are that's such a childish thing to do. You reverse exactly the numbers and then said, but you said so already. It's unbelievable. Now, there is no foundation for the numbers that Lowenfield has put out, and that needs to be clear. Because what he did in his the report he submitted earlier with all the explanations, he never had this version of what he did. He has now taken it upon himself to come up with yet another version. And I'm surprised that he would do that, not expecting to be challenged, not expecting people to realize what he's trying to do. And what he's trying to do, make no bones about it, Ed, is to actually rig an election with the world watching. It takes some courage. You got to give them that. Take some courage to blatantly rig an election when you know the whole world is watching what you're doing.
Indar, I'm going to bring you in here. Your thoughts on these ridiculous numbers that Lowenfield came up with?
Ridiculous as it may seem, and you just heard Sanjeev talk about how brazen the attempts are, it is still the very reason that the country cannot move forward. We are like in an election purgatory. You know, you can't go forward, you can't go backward. But what is clear here, and for the listeners and the viewers, is that a number has been established and certified. Now, when you certify a regional vote with the way called certification of recount that they have, when you certify that and GCOM stamp that document and all of the parties who are involved in the recount sign off on it, what you have there is an ascertainment of fact. You have an examination of votes cast, right? The ones that are spoiled and invalid or damaged were set aside, right? And agreed upon. Every ballot was agreed upon by the parties doing the recount. So after that whole long 35 days process has been completed, you have 10 declarations for each region. And it is a certificate. It's like a birth certificate, Ed, like your birth certificate that proves your existence, who is your mother, who's your father, where you're born, what time was your birth, your time of birth. Same thing with the certificate. It is that much of a powerful document. And you have 10 of it, which Lowenfield staff stamp as certified. And he has copies of those. The world saw those. Every single observer group attested to it and have seen it, knows the total valid votes cast in 2nd of March 2020 is 460,352 votes. Lowenfield made 2 attempts now to thwart those numbers and manipulate them in a fraudulent manner. It is tantamount to elections fraud what he's doing. It is tantamount to elections fraud. He's in no court, has not yet been has prosecuted him. But what he is doing is wiping out 115,844 persons who voted for the government of their choice. Now, you as a voter, I am a voter, my neighbor, my friends who are voters, we went through a tedious long process to become valid voters. We had to register, we had to show people we bought certificate, we had to show up on time between 6 to 6 on election day. We had to provide evidence that we have a valid ID, we are on the list. 10 people check we and verify us at the election polling station, and then we cast our vote. 115,844 of us were invalid. Is that what Lowenfield is telling to this country? It is madness. It is actually cosmic stupidity to even write a number down like that and present it to the chair and the commission of GCOM.
What is even more bizarre, Indar and Sanjeev, is the fact that Lowenfield initially had about 185,000 plus votes in his report when he submitted the valid votes to the chair, I think on the 16th. And in his summary of the observation reports, and when he inserted his opinion, unsolicited opinion, which was not a requirement, by the way, for him, he, at that time, he said there was only 185,000 plus valid votes. Within a matter of days,
Well,
before you go in, Sanjeev, within a matter of days, that 185,000 moved to 323,000. So when you look at the numbers that Lowenfield presenting, they're so bizarre that, you know, I don't know how you comprehend this.
But Ed, this is the crux of the problem. His numbers don't match Mingo's numbers, and Mingo had two sets of numbers, and they didn't match each other. And he has, in fact, 3 sets of numbers, and none of them match each other either. So we have all these sets of numbers that are being produced by public officials that the state pays to do this job, and they're not doing it. And we had a recount, and the recount figure doesn't match anything of the 5 versions produced by these public officials. This is unspeakable, the wrong that they are doing. The entire nation is waiting on a result for more than 100 days of an election of 700, a population of 700,000. 460,000 people voted, Ed. We could have counted this by show of hands. Come out in front of your gap and put your hand up, and we would have finished by now. This is utterly ridiculous. The actions of Lowenfield and Mingo have made us the laughing stock of the region and the world. People are looking at us and wondering, what is wrong in Guyana? And why is it a public official can't simply do his job? Why are public officials paid by the state trying to fix an election for one party? And this is not a subtle thing. This is a blatant thing. We've spoken so much about the APNU's SOPs. We are never going to see that. Never. Up to now, they still wouldn't show it. And on what basis are they supporting what is going on? Any decent government, any decent leadership will say, look, I don't understand what Mr. Lowenfield is doing. And why is he trying to do this? But it is the only explanation why the coalition is not asking these questions and are quite happy to grab at what Lowenfield is saying and run with it, is because they're involved in it and they have knowledge of what is going on. That is the only inference possible. Why would they not want to know why the numbers are changing? On the last occasion, he gave them 2/3 of parliament. Now he's reduced that. They don't seem to be concerned because according to him, they would have had 2/3 of the parliament. Don't they want it? If he's declaring what is fair, don't they want to ask a question? Why are your numbers changing? These things, if you ask a child on the street, and every time you give the child a different answer, child would want to know, well, which one is the right one? And why is your answer changing so often? These things are preposterous. And for a nation to endure what is, for want of a better phrase, it might be a comedy show, but it's not funny because it's our lives. And this is continuing, just like when with the court system. What choice we had but to go to the Caribbean Court of Justice? How else can we correct the obvious wrong? Lowenfield wrote a letter yesterday with that report, and it was published all over social media and in the press. In his report, he says, in response to your letter of the 16th June, and in having regard to the ruling in David versus GCOM, these are my figures. So how did valid votes change? How did he change these numbers based on the ruling of the court? And there are people who are saying, well, why are you going to court? And why are you putting all of this back into the court system? But what choice do we have? We have a court of appeal that took jurisdiction when they shouldn't. They inserted a word to amend the Constitution when they should not have. With the greatest respect to them, there is a fear now that they could now act on Lowenfield's report because it is quite possible that they might want to go back. So the CCJ has acted decisively. As soon as the report was made public and it was known to the court, then Senior Counsel Douglas Mendez made representation to say to all the lawyers and to the court to say, look what's happening. While we are in court, this process seems to be moving ahead. And if the court doesn't take charge of the situation that is going on now, we might very well have the process accelerate. And we need the protection that affords us. So the court, that's why they acted. But is it everything that happens in this country? We have to get a public official instructed and directed what he must do. Can't of his own free will he do his job?
But
these things are
go ahead.
These things are things which there must be a day of reckoning for. These things cannot continue.
Sanjeev, but you made a couple of points there, and I want to take you back before I bring in Indar. And I want to speak to you. You talked about the changing numbers and the fact that APNU AFC is saying anything. They are the intellectual authors of this. So they will not say anything. They will not be concerned about claim that they won elections on 4 different occasions with 4 different numbers when people only voted once. They are not concerned about that. You know, they are concerned that Ed, numbers are skewed in favor of them.
Ed, I know that you see a lot of what goes on social media. Do you notice that all the complaints that we had a few weeks ago about migrant voters, dead voters, all of these things, do you notice that has totally gone away? Nobody's saying anything. Nobody's trying to find proof. Nobody's trying to find justification for it. What they are saying is Lowenfield said we won. So they're unconcerned about how that has come about. They have simply said they've made this ruckus about that. And they did for weeks at the Artichon Convention Center. But it's all been dispelled. They can produce no proof still. Up to today, they can produce no proof to justify what they were saying. And now they're saying, well, it's not us who do it. It's Lowenfield who say this. So we had nothing to do with that. It's Lowenfield. But clearly, Lowenfield must be an agent. That's the only inference that can be drawn. He must be an agent of APNU because he's doing their bidding. That's the only inference that we can draw, Ed.
And so before I bring you in here, Indar, you know, and one of the things we have to recognize is the fact that before the recount with the Lowenfield numbers, they claimed victory. When the recount started and the numbers start coming out and the public, Guyana and the rest of the world start seeing that those SOPs, those copies of SOPs the PEP had in its possession, which were issued by GCOM, were matching the numbers coming out from the recount. Then they said, we no longer won. What we have now is corruption, and well, we have fraud, and we have voter irregularity. Then Lowenfield came up with his numbers. Then they said, oh, hold on, we won. Then Claudette sent him back. The Justice Claudette Singh sent him back and well, instructed him to prepare the report based on the recount numbers. They said, no, we didn't win again. The numbers are fraudulent. Then Lowenfield comes out again with another set of numbers yesterday, and they say, oh, we won again. I mean, like I said yesterday, Sanjeev, in Guyanese terms, they need to pick a struggle. It's either you won the elections or you lost the elections. And clearly they have lost the elections. Indar, I'll bring you in here, your thoughts.
Eddie, as I said just now, there is a number that was established and you cannot erase that number. And that number is 233,336 votes, which people of this country voted for the PPP. Now, they, in that same recount, received 217,920 votes. They lost by 15,416 votes, and you cannot undo that. If the APNU and AFC are trying to undo the recounted numbers, it's a fool's errand. Now, let's go back to Lowenfield and his reports. Mind you that the day that Lowenfield is supposed to submit his report, he wasn't even present at the GCOM building. From all reports that we've seen, he didn't show up. But suddenly, so you have this case with David versus GCOM, and you have a ruling, but that was even stayed. The ruling was stayed for 3 days. Sanjeev can speak to that. But yet he took it upon himself, went and dropped a report using criteria that nobody knows about to determine he has made himself judge, jury, and executioner now. So he is now putting criteria to determine what is a valid vote and what is an invalid vote of his own will, and struck out 115,844 votes off of the tallied votes coming out of the recount. I'm saying to you that it is a corrupt report. It should be cast aside, set aside, and buried. It is not even worth the ink it is printed on. The paper is printed on it. I am telling you, Mr. Lowenfield has proven to the country in a number of occasions that he has lost all professionality. He does not possess the honesty that is required of a chief elections officer to declare and to provide a report to the commission that is truthful. But the world already know the truthful number, Eddie. The world knows that the People's Progressive Party won these elections. The APNU spin machine that they put out there that they win today, the election is not credible, they had voters vote. All of these things are just frivolous things that they've thrown. The frivolity of these things that they've put in the way during the process of bringing the recount to an end, all of them have been debunked, every one of them. The Commissioner of Police, when Harmon first submitted the first letter of 207 names, the Commissioner of Police himself debunked 35 of those 100 of the 207. The remaining 172 names, people came out. It's horrendously inaccurate. People came out and said, I'm alive. I am here in the jurisdiction here. People without passport, they say travel. It is nonsense. The second letter that he sent with 310 names, within a matter of 4 or 5 days, about 178, 180 persons came forward out of the 310 and said that I am in the country and I voted. So all of those problems that they put out there and say that, that is problems and question the credibility of the election were all debunked. Let's talk about the poll book issue, what they have. So they're claiming if there's a poll book that was missing or was not in the possession at the time of the recount, the entire box that the poll book is related to, none of the votes they counted. None of the votes. So a poll book supposed to record certain information about oath of identity and so on. It is something that, according to GCOM manual and ROPA, according to those statutory document is within the realm, responsibility, custodianship of the polling, the presiding officer at polling day. It doesn't belong to PPP. It doesn't belong to AP and you're no other party. They keep the book, they write in the book, they transfer the book to the DRO, then goes to the RO of the region. Nobody have control over that book. That is a contesting party. So if the book is not there or whatever, that does not say anything about a person when they put the X next to PPP or ANOG or Change Guyana or APNU. It has nothing to do with that. So what they've been doing is manufacturing problems, concocting arguments to justify manufactured problems. And that is not a way that credible, honest, and decent people operate. And they have campaigned on honesty and decency, mind you. They have campaigned on honesty and decency. My question to the entire collective APNU leadership, where is the honesty? Where is the decency? Where is it? If you've managed to put this country through what you've done over the past couple of months, they have dragged the country through barbed wires. Everybody's hurting. Businesses are hurting. People are out of jobs. People are being furloughed. There's starvation in parts of the country, right? We are a bankrupt country. You have $92 billion in the treasury. It is a bankrupt country. I mean, where do we go from here? And you still continue to hang on to power, holding on to that rope that is caught in your hands, and you're not giving up. I mean, Mr. Bautista next door conceded to Santoki. Why can't Mr. Granger concede to Dr. Ali? It is clear that the PPP has won the election. Concede and save whatever's left of your legacy.
There is nothing left, though. I can tell you that. There is absolutely nothing left, because the intellectual author of all of this, in my mind, is David Granger. He's the man behind this, but he tries to separate himself, as he always do, from the APNU AFC. He did the same thing in government when the corruption was rampant and still rampant. He always tries to separate himself from the government as though he has no control or has no part to play in all of that. So he's doing the same thing. And as I mentioned, the issue corruption, Indar and Sanjeev, I think when we look at what is happening, when we look at how state assets are being given out to friends, families, and cronies, when we look at how monies are being spent, contracts are being signed, it is clear that the only reason this coalition wants to hang on to power, as illegal as it is because they want to continue to pilfer the treasury, which is already empty. You just mentioned that. And they want to take assets that belong to the people of Guyana and put it in the hands of their friends and their families, who will keep it for them. And that's the reality. We saw those documents coming out yesterday, those leaked documents, I suspect, from NISIL. And we saw what is happening with the Ocean View hospital, as they call it. The money is being spent there, and the amount of rent that is being paid, that will be paid to that gentleman. It's the drug bond 2.0 we are seeing there, a repeat of the drug bond. And they continue to sign contracts with people. Winston Jordan himself, who has absolutely no authority at this time to sign any document whatsoever dealing with the finances of this country, continues to do that.
Well, Ed, one of the big problems is this: they're like vultures feeding on the carcass of the dead. First, when they came into power, they had a treasury that could have run the country and was prosperous. The treasury is drained. We are now bankrupt, so there's no more money left to steal. So what they're doing now is they're disposing of assets at a stupendous rate to various companies. We don't know the process by which this went through. We then have the hospital fiasco or whatever is going on at Ocean View. And these are all matters that have no parliamentary oversight to them. They have nothing going on in terms of public transparency as to how the monies are being spent, where the monies are coming from, and why it is these are appropriate expenditures. But while all of that is going on, and while billions are being spent on the hospital, and billions are being spent on I saw in this morning's Skytour News, a couple $100 million contract is given to one of the main supporters of the party. While that is being done, we have a COVID pandemic in Guyana. We had a shutdown for so long. Persons are struggling to put food on the table. Families are now struggling. But we can afford to hand out contracts like we are. We can afford to dispose the assets, the public assets as we are. We can afford to spend billions of dollars on a hospital when the pandemic could have been controlled in more appropriate ways and the money could have been better spent for what we were doing. But those things are this government is unconcerned. They are concerned with how do we hang on to power and what do we need to do and which public official we need to persuade to keep us in power for as long as possible. My thing is, Ed, you and I had this conversation before. What would be the end game realistically? Because everything you come up with, in a day or two, it turns around on you. And every ruse or obstacle they come up with in a day or two is removed and they're left naked. And then they try to find something else. But this must stop. This must come to an end. The people of Guyana now need an opportunity. They went to the polls, they voted for their leader. Dr. Ali is who they chose. We should be able to move forward. And it's important that we be able to do this as quickly as possible, without any more loss to the Treasury, without any more disposal of state assets, without any more public official deciding that he will play kingmaker. It's important that we get there as quickly as possible.
I bring you in here, Indar.
Okay, so the newspaper this morning had two issues. One is about 130 acres of land that NISL has actually sold off.
I think we're getting some difficulties there with Indar. In the meantime, we get Indar back in though, Sanjeev. I want to quickly just run this. Oh, he's back in. Go ahead, Indar. We lost you there just now. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm saying that coming out of NISL, that the report yesterday in the Kaichor News, 130 acres of some around there has been given out. Now, some of those are lands by the waterside, which is valuable property. Some of them are lands up in Ogle, where Exxon is building their headquarters in that area. Asset values are extremely high. You're now selling those out. Not even some of the companies are not even Guyanese companies. They're foreign companies. A Guyanese company want to do investment and apply to land through Go Invest and through Lands and Survey. You got to pull teeth. It's so painful to get a piece of land to do your work and to do your investment. And you're a Guyanese taxpayer. But these lands are going to foreigners, people who only have shell companies here, set up, registered here, and those are the ones getting the land. We don't know the valuation for it. We don't know what was paid for it. Those information are not available. But yet you have a de facto Minister of Finance signing orders to transfer these assets to these companies, right? Now, and he's doing that after they have a no confidence motion since 2018 year end. You lost the election March 2nd, and on June 11th, you're signing those. June 11th. So now you have a court case that is distracting everybody, and what they're doing is signing off the lands that are left to people. So what will end up happening, what's end up going to happen here, Ed, is that we will be strangers in our own country. It will be owned by foreigners. Our people will not have the opportunity to say, I own a piece of land, I can go to a bank and I can start up a business, I can build a hotel, or I can build a business to rent or a warehouse and make some money. No, our people are not afforded that opportunity. So they are just giving it to their friends and their and the friends of the cabal so that they can benefit from it somewhere the next. No, but I want to go back to the Ocean View $1 billion refurbishment that's happening there. It seems to me like the pandemic is going to be over in Guyana. Are we going to put it, and that hotel is not going to finish for that price, right? Look, and they're doing this without any PSIP program approved by Parliament. Parliament through the budget approves the capital expenditure for the country. And there was no approval of there's no budget. Where, on what authority are you spending these monies, right? What authority is Mr. Jordan spending the country's money? Now, the Bank of Guyana continues to draw down on the assets there. Now, you have $92 billion in overdraft. It represents 43% of the total assets of the Bank of Guyana. He has leveraged the bank. The country's assets, he have leveraged it. The solid security or collateral that we had in the bank in 2015 was about $25 billion worth in gold. They sold that out. At the end of last year, it's about $715 million. From $25 billion to $715 million. You sold out the entire gold reserves for next to nothing. If he had waited, gold prices right now is the highest right now because it's the safe zone. But these guys don't think. They don't sit down and look forward to see what can happen. They're not financial strategists. What they are just people that like a bull in a china shop. They go around and they spend money without even thinking. And you don't have none to see for it too. What is it that you have to see for it? The last time I made mention of this thing is when I was on the campaign trailhead. And I made mention of the amount of debt they're overdraft they're racking up at the Bank of Guyana and all of the monies that they spent out from the Central Housing and Planning Authority, the monies that they spent out from the GGMC, the monies that they spent out from Forestry Commission. And Mr. Jordan went on a 2-page thing in the Chronicle and attacked me and said that I breached public trust. Why don't he go and show the people the Bank of Guyana $92 billion overdraft that he racked up down there? What did he spend that money on? Right? What did he spend that money on? Those are the questions that the free media should ask him. They should brackle him. That is a colloquial term. They should brackle him and ask him, what did you spend that money on, Mr. Jordan? What authority are you spending money now on, Mr. Jordan? And let him explain, because he's been raping the treasury all the time. He's been doing that.
All right, we're almost out of time here. I want to, before we close up, let me thank you, gentlemen, for joining me this morning. But I want to leave our viewers with 2 things. One, the fact that the reality is APNU AFC lost the elections by the ballot. So no attempt at using technicalities and using the back door will allow them back in power. The people came out and voted on March 2nd, and 15,416 of them more voted for the PPP than the APNU AFC. You cannot change that. You cannot change the votes. Secondly, no matter how much they attempt, no matter what they do, they will not be able to steal the will of the people of Guyana. And I want to leave our viewers, Sanjeev and Indar, with a statement last evening from the Organization of American States. I'll read the entire statement and I'll tell the public where I want them to focus heavily on. The statement says the Organization of American States has accompanied the March 2 general and regional elections in Guyana through all of its stages, including the national recount in Georgetown from May 6 to June 8, 2020. OAS observers were present for the determination and tabulation of the total valid votes cast in each region, totals that were subsequently confirmed by the Chief Elections Officer and submitted to the Guyana Elections Commission, GECOM. GECOM is therefore already in possession of a result based on the valid votes cast on March 2nd, 2020, through a recount exercise that was approved by all stakeholders. In these circumstances, the OAS General Secretariat expects that anyone who wishes to challenge the validity of any of these votes should do so through an election petition filed in the High Court after GECOM declares the election results based on the recount data. The OAS continuously keep repeating that the results, the declaration should be based on the recount data. Guyana's 2020 elections have been reviewed repeatedly and extensively by both national and regional courts. While the OAS General Secretariat advocates for the right of all citizens to access electoral justice, there is a fine line between the right to redress and the use of the courts to stall the electoral process. It is undeniable that this election has gone on long enough. The process in Guyana must be brought to an end based on the results of the national recount, again, and with respect for the will of the majority of the electorate. The OAS remains committed to the strengthening of democracy in Guyana, hoping for a just and fair conclusion of the current process. Clearly, the bottom line is that the declaration should be based on the numbers generated from the recount. Those are the valid votes. Gentlemen, I want to thank you for joining me this morning. We're out of time. Matter of fact, we went over our time a little bit. It's quite an interesting and informative discussion, and I want to urge our viewers to join us again around 1 p.m.
Thank you.
We come back to you to give you more information on the developments.
Thank
again,
you,
gentlemen,
Ed.
thanks.
Thank you, Ed. Thank you.
Take care.